You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. My name is Alan Weitz. Today, John and I will be talking about iconic photographs, pictures that typically define an era or specific point in time. We'll also be discussing the relevance of smartphones, citizen journalism, social media, shortened attention spans, and how they affect the impact of iconic images on our collective consciousness. We're fortunate to have not one but two guests today who are well qualified to discuss iconic photography. Hal Buell is an accomplished author and a 40-year veteran photo editor with Associated Press, 25 of them as head of AP's worldwide photo service. He's worked on assignment in more than 35 countries. Under his watch, the AP Picture Service won 12 Pulitzer Prizes and other national and international photography awards. He headed up a program to bring digital imaging and transmission technologies to the AP and headed a project to develop a digital picture archive that currently contains over 7 million pictures. Welcome, Hal. Olivier Laurent is editor of LightBox, Time Magazine's photography website. Before taking his current position, he was the associate editor for the British Journal of Photography and the editor of FLTR, Filter, an independent weekly magazine about smartphone photography. Welcome, Olivier. While you're listening, feel free to give us your opinions on Twitter at BHPhotoVideo with the hashtag BHPhotoPodcast. Let's define an iconic image. Are they defined by their impact? Are they restricted to a time and a culture? Do they require a passage of time to become iconic? Is it immediate? Is it after the fact? Hal, what are your thoughts?
Well, that's a very good description of an icon. all of the above is the real answer there. I can only give you my definition, and I'm sure that others have their own definition of an icon. But to me, an icon is a picture that, while capturing an individual moment, somehow summarizes what has gone before. And if we're lucky, gives us a peek, if we're lucky and if we're smart enough, it gives us a peek at what will be coming down the road in the future. So that really puts a limit on what pictures are icons, and my personal opinion also is that word icon is thrown around a lot these days, to the point where it's a cliche that's lost its cachet, they say. And along with the phrase defining moment, there just aren't that many defining moments, and there aren't that many pictures that I would call icons. And I'm sure as we talk about pictures, we'll begin to sort out which of those would be.
Do you think any of that has to do with the fact that there are maybe too many pictures coming out these days and it's sort of being filtered and watered down? It's harder to spot them?
The answer to that is yes, in capital letters, and that's a whole paragraph in itself. If you want me to go into it, I will.
It's actually part 3 of our discussion.
I was going to say, yeah. From what you said earlier, it sounds like it's coming down. So let's save it for that time.
I just add that an iconic image is also something that moves us, that provoke a sort of reaction in the audience, in the people who see this photo. And it can be like a picture that enrage us or get us to rethink the way we look at the world and we look at the events that are happening around us.
Is it only news photography we're talking about, or could we consider it's open?
There's been iconic images that are more in the art world. It's really, I'd say, it's something that redefines the way we look at the world, in my opinion.
Do you think it needs to do more, though? I mean, than just that kind of that visceral impact that we feel and the emotional impact that we feel when we see a photo? Because I feel that way about a lot of photos. And even going through, Hal's book, Moments, yesterday, I was touched page after page.
I'd say that it's the images that moves an entire population, I'd say. Like that a community, in a way, that moves us collectively.
Do you think we can say universally, or is that too much? Or
there's going to be countries that will have different iconic images, So if we come up with a list of the iconic images in the U.S. it'll probably end up with a different list than in France or in the UK or China or South America. Yeah.
What Olivier says is true. So an icon can mean a lot to one person, and to that person it will be an icon. I see nothing wrong with that, and I think it's true. One of my favorite pictures I would describe to you, and you would have no meaning to it because it just has never been shown a lot. But I think the icon has to move people to some kind of action. It has to have a lot of power and stimuli to encourage people to do something. But there is also what Olivier says is can be very personal, and I think those are narrower definitions. But I guess that's what we'll struggle through here as we
that's
talk.
what we're here for. Yeah,
Something I noticed just this morning on one of, I think it was on F-Stoppers, that there's a photographer named Anthony Kurtz who based a photograph, an ecology-minded photograph, on Joe Rosenthal's photograph of the raising of the flag, and it shows several workers planting a tree on top of a landfill. And it mimics it perfectly, but you look at the photograph, you know exactly what it's referring to, but you immediately recognize it's a whole different set of parameters and a different meaning.
Well, I think, in my mind, again, that the great icons are caricaturized incredibly. I have a collection of 68 pictures that characterize Joe Rosenthal's Iwo Jima picture, and the Naval Institute has another 72 versions of characters. So really, and that's true of a lot of icons. A lot of the icons that I see as icons.
It's like Mona Lisa, same thing.
Yes, exactly.
Or the
exactly.
You can see after September 11 when they raised the flag on the rubble of World Trade Center, that was also like taking inspired by that photograph.
The great icons are often imitated, but they never reach the altitude of the first original.
It might be fair to say that these recreations are what bring iconic status to these images. I mean, they're so much a part of us that they're so easily recognized, so meaningful in their own way.
It's just another echo of that image. Mm-hmm. Do the photos have to be good to be iconic?
Define good.
Okay. That right there is a good question. Let me follow it up here. Photography used to be the domain of seasoned professionals, photographers who earn their stripes, who earn the right to be called photographers. Today, anybody with a phone can theoretically capture a Pulitzer Prize-winning picture. Does that cheapen the playing field? Does it lower the bar in any fashion?
Just look at Abu Ghraib, for example.
Yeah.
The iconic image of the hooded man was taken with a point-and-shoot camera by a soldier, and it became an icon in a way. It defined the war in Iraq. It's one of the photos that defined that war, and it wasn't taken by a professional, and it wasn't taken as a historical record. It was taken as soldiers having fun, torturing prisoners. And we don't look at see what camera has been used or if the person had proper training in photography to define what an icon is.
That's true. I think, for example, the 1951 Pulitzer was made by a woman named Virginia Shaw who used a box brownie to shoot a picture of a truck dangling off of a bridge. And it was not an icon, but it was what today we'd call a citizen photograph. Mm-hmm. I think, though, that if you look at, if we were to gather here 100 pictures that we all agreed were icons, I dare say the vast majority would have been made by professionals.
Yeah, definitely.
We can talk about citizen photography. I think you have that on your agenda there.
Oh, it is there. It is there.
Very well. No, but just to follow up on that, this idea that a good photo, yes, it's very hard to define, but if we're talking composition, lighting, does an iconic, even a photo by a pro, does it have to be a good photo, or is it just more about the moment, the time, and the relevancy over time?
Well, it's all of the above. That's the wonderful thing about photography. A dramatic moment can overpower composition or bad composition. Good composition can overpower a not so dramatic moment. Mm-hmm. That's one of the charms and one of the challenges of
when you
You
look
often
at
think about picture quality also. People think iconic pictures by Ansel Adams, they have a very different aesthetic and technical quality than a lot of war photographs, which are out of focus, blurry, and grainy.
look at Robert Capa's
Sure.
D-Day photograph. Like,
Exactly.
they're bad photograph when you look at the quality. Like, say, they're blurry. They're taken like he's under fire. And he doesn't have time to just get
Compose,
the perfect
They don't make the
composition.
checklist in any
Exactly.
way. Contrast, grain,
Exactly.
nothing. It's true.
And it just worked because it was the moment was important.
It was also alone,
Exactly.
not exclusive, but alone,
Yeah.
and that counts a lot.
Yeah.
Because that means the picture will get distributed and be seen, and its very repeated presence, which we should get into in the internet conversations, gives a picture credibility that it may or may not deserve.
Yeah.
Kappa's picture did deserve it, but a lot of
It's the
lousy
only-
pictures.
It's the only record of that event.
Yes, exactly. As it turned out, that's right.
Yeah.
Hal, you've described Vietnam as being the last full access war for photographers, where photographers were actually there on the front lines recording things firsthand. And then that whole access disappeared and it's been replaced by, like we just said, civilians and soldiers in their downtime with phones.
Well, there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
Please. Access has been denied. The thing that I've often said that Vietnam was photographed like no war before, and I believe it's highly unlikely that any war in the future will be photographed the way Vietnam was photographed, because the photographers had instant access to the battlefield. There was no censorship. In fact, the U.S. government went out of its way to get photographers and writers to the scene of action while it was still going on, and that's why those pictures were so dramatic. Like Kappa's picture, he was there at the invasion. That's why that picture is dramatic, not because of the quality, certainly, but because he was there. And the Vietnam thing is a whole other subject for discussion, because there are many icons that came out of Vietnam. And I don't know if we want to start that now.
Feel free.
Yeah, go for it.
I give Olivia a chance to jump
go
in.
for it. Don't worry.
I'll go ahead. Well, there were three great icons, right, at least I think, from the war. One was the burning monk picture made by a writer, not a photographer.
Interesting.
And that picture was so dramatic that it lifted the war from the back alley stage of a Sometimes cover to the front page, and it stayed there for 10 years. So that picture was important because the attention, icons also bring attention to stuff. We talked about that earlier. It brought attention to the story. Then along came Eddie Adams with his picture of the Saigon execution, the colonel shooting the Viet Cong. Everybody, it helped in the war. Well, it didn't help in the war. The war lasted longer after the picture was made than it existed before the picture was made. But it made people get off the fence who had opinions about the war or had no opinion, and they jumped one way or the other. So in that sense, it was a force. Nick Utz's picture, again, said to have ended the war, but the war lasted 3 years after that.
This is the photograph of the children running down the road
the child,
after
the naked
napalm.
girl. Yes, right. That picture became a symbol of the horror of war and exists today, even more than Eddie's. It exists today as a photographic iconic example of the horror of war and how the innocents are caught in the crossfire.
Absolutely.
So there's all those are different definitions of what an icon is, as we were said earlier.
The Saigon assassination, which I know you can go into detail, while it brought people off the fence and engaged and started this debate in such a way, was it an accurate image?
Eddie was the ideal wire service photographer because Eddie had no political agenda.
Right. That's what I can understand later.
He made a picture that happened in front of him, and he frankly didn't think that much of the picture and talked negatively about the picture most of his life. He didn't feel it was that good. He felt...
He didn't feel it was good in what sense?
He didn't feel the picture told the whole story of why that took place, that execution took place. The picture didn't tell about how the aide of Loan's aide and his wife and his children were assassinated by the Viet Cong. It didn't tell about what had gone on that day before the Viet Cong was captured and so on and so forth. And he said it ruined Loan's life, and Eddie felt Loan, and a lot of people also felt Loan was a nationalist hero.
That's an interesting story, but I would imagine that most photographs, be they iconic or otherwise, that affect people's emotions or feelings, it's based on their perception of it anyway. And quite often, we're totally ignorant of what the true backstory is behind a lot of these sort of things.
Absolutely. That's very true.
Can I ask, were you specifically involved in that photo, right?
I was in Asia from 1959 until 1964. And the war was really just beginning to pick up in the late 63 and into 64. So when I came back to New York, I kind of became the Vietnam guy in New York, and I worked closely with the Saigon staff and with Eddie. At that time, Eddie was in the domestic service, and worked closely with Eddie on other projects.
By chance, did you see a contact sheet? Was there a series of photos leading up?
No, it was all done in Vietnam.
Okay, so you weren't specifically...
What happened? Well, if you really want to get into that...
I have a fast question. Just curious about one thing. Today we have everything is instantaneous. That photographs taken in Vietnam, on average, how long did it take them between the time the picture was taken out, God knows where, and the time it hit the newspapers, the news wires?
No, in that case, it didn't take long. I would say 4 or 5 hours. Because there were radio photo circuits from Vietnam to New York, to Tokyo or Manila or Frankfurt, and those were automatically relayed into the U.S. network. So
it wasn't a bad delay then.
No, not in that case. There were some delays on some other Vietnam pictures. The radio photocopy out of Vietnam was really bad quality, and so we tried to rely more on prints that were. Saigon would enter the stuff and then ship it to New York, and we would then re-edit it and put a lot of original material on the network. But the hot pictures, like the Saigon, like Nick Utz, like a lot of others, went out immediately by radio.
Gotcha.
Can I jump backwards a bit to the idea of good photos and art photos? Because to me, the idea of photos, Ansel Adams, even Dorothea Lange, maybe that's different. I don't think of those as iconic. My iconic images always go to news images, things that are specifically related to an event, or in some cases even to a certain celebrity or a time, which is also a time and place. I think, for example, one of my favorite photos is the Robert Franks photo of the trolley car in New Orleans. I think it's a great photo, and it could be iconic. It could define America in one shot. But do people think of that as an iconic photo? And can art photos be iconic photos? Are they?
It depends to a great deal on the atmosphere that the photo drops into and people begin to see it. There's a lot of pressure there that either downplays or uplifts the photo. And that's true of a lot of the Vietnam stuff, and the same with some of the stuff from Katrina. Although I don't know that any picture there I would call iconic. But then it's a personal definition.
Well, yeah, I think this is kind of why we're here to some degree we all personally feel photos. There's no doubt about that. But when do they go beyond that? I mean, when can we say something is universal is a big word. I don't want to use it, but that is bigger than just something that I feel or you feel or this group feels, but a lot of people.
Let me say one other thing on Vietnam, and I don't want to dominate this conversation, but it wasn't an individual picture that influenced greatly what went on. There was this incredibly upscale level of photography that came out day after day after day after day over a period of 5 or 6 years. That's where the influence of photography on the perception of the war in the United States and other places of the world really came from. And there were these spikes of Nick Ut and Eddie Adams and Mel Brown and a few others that were great pictures. But it was that steady flow, that drip, 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 drip. Every day there was something coming down the line, and the same with the magazines. Every Life ran series after series after series. Larry Burroughs was one of the great Life photographers. He did a lot of wonderful pictures. It was that drilling, that constant, and
you couldn't escape it,
a high level all the way.
This is maybe a conversation for another podcast, but I'd love to get into the idea of why that's changed, why the relationship between the military, the press.
That's an easy question. The military took a beating. They resolved it. They weren't going to take another beating.
Basically, yeah. I remember during the first Gulf War when you could feel that happening. You could feel that kind of closure, and we're not going to go down that path again. And here we are with embedded photographers, but images still get out. We see these images.
But not in the volume of Vietnam, not in that daily. Plus, the present stuff in the Middle East is a little more remote from the American mind than Vietnam was. When you look at a Vietnam picture, that's my son. That's the kid next door whose face I'm looking at, as opposed to what we see in the Middle East, which are different.
Interesting. Yeah.
Photography is tricky.
Yeah, it sure is. Sure. And with LightBox, are you dealing with this on a day-to-day basis in terms of news coming in and decisions that have to be made, or do you get a chance to kind of have a broader overlook?
So the nice thing about Lightbox is that we sit kind of like in the middle between the print and online. So we have the opportunity of take a breather and look at what's coming in. But I'd say going back to the iconic images, often you need months or years to realize which photograph is an iconic image. It doesn't. Sometimes you'll see an image and you're like, that's going to be an important image. That's going to be a defining image. But is it going to be iconic? It takes a lot of time for it to happen. And if you look back over the past 10 years, it's very difficult to name these iconic images. You look back like 50 years ago, the Vietnam War, or America in the 50s, 60s, you can find these iconic images because we had the hindsight. We had time to digest all of the photos there.
Speaking of hindsight, do you ever go backwards in Lightbox, or do you only deal with contemporary? You do go back.
We do go back. We look at the stories of the iconic images of the past, and like time is like life is part of the Time brand, and so we have these archives that are sitting there and like full of gems, like and images that need to be seen again.
Well, I think what you're saying gets to this idea, and even with the Eddie Adams image, the photos have a life of their own. I mean, once they're taken and once they're out there, we almost have no say. As the photographer or the editor, it becomes a decision of the people to some degree. I mean,
and distribution counts too.
Thank you. That was the
famous picture, "The Kiss" by Eisenstadt. That was made by another photographer, a Navy photographer named Jorgensen. Admittedly, not as good, but not that bad. I mean, similar, but not as good. But Izzy's picture was distributed, and people saw it. They said, "Oh, wow!" And that became the picture. And the other one is in the NARA files.
Right.
It turns up every once in a while.
Well, that's a very good point. I think that was a question that we had on our list of, how does the companies that own the images and the distribution method affect their...
Well, especially if you look today at the way the media works with social media. Like looking back at last year in September, is a picture of Alan Kurdi, and I am not going to say that it's
that's the baby.
It's a baby.
Washed up on the beach.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Syrian baby washed up on the Turkey beach. I'm not going to say that it's an iconic image because it's too soon, but it's an important photo. And it wasn't published first. It didn't reach that status thanks to the media. It got there because of social media. It's because someone shared it on Twitter, and then someone else retweeted it, and then it just went completely viral like that. And it pushed the newsrooms to actually take that photo a lot more seriously because the audience wanted it. But 2 weeks before, there were photos like that, the same photos on the wires, and it just, the public wasn't moved by these photos. It's just this one kid actually moved people, pushed people to do something, and then it reached the status that he had.
That's an interesting point you make. There were pictures before that from different sources that in many ways were more dramatic.
Exactly.
But you know what, this is a personal, what made the difference was there was a kid with a red sweater,
yes,
like all the kids in the neighborhood.
Exactly.
And it's this instant identification with the picture, and that's what lifted it out, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a good point, yeah. That's a very good point.
It could be like, it basically became, it could be your kid. It could be your brother, your sister. It could be anyone that you know.
I personally think that if any image will be iconic, that's it. And it's interesting to hear what you say, the way it took a life of its own and came through social media. I mean, there are little elements, and as you mentioned, the clothes, even the soldier or the official there, he's kind of just on a checklist. It's not a check. He's just kind of doing his work. It's almost like it's not happening. And there's something about the idea of like the beach is a place for a kid to play.
That's
And
He's there at
part
the
of it.
shore, and
especially there, like it's a very popular tourist destination.
oh yeah,
It's where you like if you're going to Turkey for the summer, that's where you go, and then suddenly this beach is turned into a graveyard.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it was the public that brought that picture even more into the forefront than it originally was. That it brought me back to a picture I mentioned in the beginning of Falling Man, which was taken on 9/11. And I believe that was actually by an AP photographer.
Richard Drew.
Richard Drew, correct. Thank you. That picture appeared in one of the inner pages of the New York Times the next day. I think it was from the first edition after the attack. And for those who don't know about it, Falling Man was an incredible photograph of a person who had to make a choice or was forced out of the building from an upper floor, and they're falling more or less straight, head down with the vertical stripes of the tower behind him. One foot is bent as if he's marching or walking upstairs. And he's frozen there. And the picture itself froze me when I saw it.
He's talking about it, freezes you.
And now one interesting thing is that the outcry for that photograph from readers, they retracted it and that picture did not appear in the Times for another 7 years, I think. And that picture, as peaceful as it was considered more horrifying than the pictures of the planes blasting through the buildings in flames. And it was pulled off.
You can identify with that, man.
Yeah.
You can see yourself on that ledge, and the fire's on one side of you, and 82 floors is on the other side of you. And that,
I
and
can't
that
even
goes through your
comprehend
mind.
it.
Yeah.
But despite the fact the impact of that picture was phenomenal.
Oh, it was.
Okay.
The documentary was done.
They backed down from publishing it. Would that still hold today?
Yes, because editors are very, very sensitive about pictures like that. And that includes the boy on the beach that Olivier referred to. The immediate reaction is not to publish it because of the horror that the picture projects. And editors will get a lot of letters, and I could tell you 50 stories of back and forth arguments between editors and their readers over why they did or didn't publish a certain picture. But as was pointed out here, the picture caught on, and you almost had to publish it. There was just no option.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there it was on it. Now it's distributed widely, and it becomes the icon concept starts to take shape.
Interesting.
What about photographs that we've long looked at as being iconic because they are embedded in our consciousness, and then we find out that they were fake to some extent? And there are a few photographs that have been out there for decades that fall into that category. Is it cheapen them? It sort of borderlines on commercial photography, even though it's supposed to be editorial.
Well, one photo that comes to mind, and there's always been so much debate about it, is the falling soldier.
Yeah.
And
it's a terrific photograph.
It is a it's an amazing.
The best one from the contact sheet that shows all the variations.
Exactly. And I'd say that's in this particular case, whether it was fake or not, it conveyed the idea of what was happening at that time. It actually got people to think about the Spanish War in a very different way. And so I'd almost say that it didn't really matter whether it was fake or not.
Does that also hold true for photographers who were seen rearranging things at Ground Zero the days following the attack for more drama?
The first war photo that was taken, and I'm forgetting the name of the photographer, of this the Valley of Death. There's two versions of that photo. One is you have the slope and the plain. It's a valley where a battle just happened, and there's one version where there's no cannonball on the plane, and then another version where there's cannonballs. And so you know that something happened, that the photographers there moved the cannonballs. And I know the New York Times did a very long investigation on this. That's fascinating. And for the photographer, with the cannonball, he was able to actually convey the terrible events that had happened there.
Actually, Earl Morris, I hope I got the
Yes,
name right,
yes.
wrote a book about that.
Exactly,
On that
yeah.
picture. And I read the book and I said, boy, the guy put a lot of effort into not much. That was my impression. But anyway, he examined the whole thing and came out that he didn't really know. He didn't know.
Exactly.
You know, the great, in my judgment, the greatest icon of all, the Iwo Jima picture, suffered an incredible criticism over that very issue. That there was a first flag that went up, and that the picture that Joe made was a posed picture of a photographer conniving with the Marine Corps to make this incredible photograph. Not true. The picture was indeed unposed and spontaneous, but to this day, people say, yeah, that was posed, wasn't it? And of course, I go crazy and say, no, it wasn't posed.
What about image manipulation, which is easier to do now than it's ever been, and it's getting incredibly hard to detect in some instances?
Rephrase the question to bring it back where we started. Can you make an icon by manipulating the picture? I'm going to let somebody else answer that question.
Go for it.
I can't go for it. I don't know if that's ever happened, but photographers have altered pictures, and a lot of them have been fired over it. But some get through, and there are steps that have been taken to watch for that kind of thing, and successful. But the problem with manipulation, there are two. The heavy manipulation that becomes satire. You know, people believe that the satire is true. There was, to use a classic example, there was a flipped picture of Obama and Michelle saluting with the wrong hand. And, you know, you look at it and I look at it, we say it was flipped. But a lot of people believe he was saluting with the wrong hand. And as it moves along the network, people see it, oh, yeah, who don't like Obama say, yeah, you see that? You see that? And the next guy, pretty soon it has its own credibility. And that's the danger of the internet. Anybody can put those kind of pictures out there. So that's the problem. And the case that I think both of us would have to deal with is the kind of minute manipulation.
Where do you draw the line on manipulation?
You just say no. No manipulation of any kind. Now, you all know what happened with the World Press photo when they had to take back a bunch of prizes.
Yeah.
And the answer is no manipulation. I don't know.
When you work with news, there cannot be any manipulation, you know. And so, like, art photographers have a tendency to be they have more freedom in what they can do. But you're not going to hire an art photographer in a news context and expect that art photographer to start faking things. You know, it's like if it's a news context, no manipulation.
You stole my thunder with the art business. You know, one thing that bugs me personally is when they start to talk about art and journalism in the same paragraph, I get very nervous. Picasso notably said that art is the lie that can lead you to the truth. And artists have that freedom. Their message, their way of telling the message, and God bless them, and sometimes they reach the truth. Journalists don't have that luxury.
When we come back, we're going to talk about how digital photography and internet dissemination has changed the status and influence of iconic photography.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. If you'd like to reach out to us with your questions or comments, email us at podcast@bhphoto.com.
Let's talk about digital photography and internet dissemination and how has it affected iconic pictures?
So one thing now is that we're overwhelmed with photographs, let's say. There's so much out there, so much being produced and so much being thrown at us. And whether that's commercial photography that we see on ads everywhere, but also news photography. I know that the photo editors at Time every day are probably looking at 10 to 20,000 photos coming in the wires.
How many layers of filters do you have? Because just as you're talking, I'm thinking about the fact that I know people who've been picture editors, and yes, to be somewhat manageable, but now you are getting more images than you can possibly register in your head. Are there different layers of filtration before it gets, say, to you or whoever you work with? Or are you opening up every envelope, so to speak?
So the online photo editors will be seeing everything. And they'll make a selection depending on what they're trying to find, you know. The print editors have the opportunity of creating their own images in a sense that assigning photographers to the events. I'd say that's the different filters we have in place. But you're still seeing every single day thousands of images. And not just from the wire, but like walking around town, you're seeing thousands of images. With your phone, you're seeing thousands of images. Whether it's on Instagram or you're following the New York Times or it's everywhere. And I think that affects the creation of these iconic images. Because since you're seeing so many images, you don't have time to reflect as much on each one of them. And actually, I'd say get to understand the power of that image. That would be the biggest difference, I'd say.
Do you get numb by it all? What was your thought?
Well, being the oldest guy in the room with all you young fellas, let me paint two pictures for you.
By the way, thank you very much for taking over my role. I appreciate it.
Pre-digital, AP transmitted 120 pictures a day to newspapers. If we had color, that took up 3 or 4 of those 120 pictures a day. So not much color went out. And I am known for having to tell people this transmission's coming, and we're not going to send you more pictures. We're going to send you better pictures, faster and better quality. We now send each paper close to 900 pictures a day, and we transmit 2,000 pictures because they don't all go everywhere. And so does Reuters, and so does Getty. Mm-hmm. So you're sitting here looking at 6,000 pictures today. Now, this is my feeling of what happens. When you're looking at 120 pictures, you look at every picture, and you say one time, "Oh, look at that! Isn't that odd? There's Marilyn Monroe standing on it with her skirt blowing. Oh my, maybe we'll put that in the paper because it's odd, not because it's important, but because it's odd." When you're looking through 6,000 pictures, you necessarily have to say, "What's the lead story? Obama press conference. What do you got in the Obama press conference? I need a 2-column. I need a 3-column." Now I'm exaggerating. It's not. I mean, there is a looking for pictures, but a lot of the serendipity is lost in the editing of pictures, I think, today because of the volume. But that's not going to change, I'll also tell you that. You think it's going to change?
Not at all.
No.
It's going to get worse and worse.
It's going to get worse.
Oh, yeah.
I think you're right.
However, going back to the image of the boy on the beach, despite the volume, we still see that there's one image that will come through. It may not be through the editor's desk, but they're still making their way out, no?
Well, what is happening is that the agencies, at least, are now beginning to say, I don't know what they call it because I'm a little remote from it, to today's best bets. Mm-hmm. And maybe they'll list 50 or 60 pictures that the agency thinks. Well, now the agency's kind of editing it, aren't they? That they become the gatekeeper. Now at a place like Time or one of the big magazines, they have people that I think even the television stations have people that look for the unusual or look for picture series or things that they can put together. But it's hard. It's just a lot of work.
And of this increased volume, would you say that there's more photographers taking equally as good photos, or there's just less good photos in that group?
You want to comment?
I'd say that you still have the amazing photographers sending amazing photos. But you also have the noise. Like, I think there's no other word for it. Like, it's the noise of every single event is now documented. Whether it be like the Oscars, where you get like thousands of photos from the Oscars, but to every single little meeting between 2 head of state, to an event downtown, for this car company or this other. These photos will be produced. And they're not the kind of photos that are going to produce, it's not the kind of photo that you're going to find the icon from there. Like but they exist. They have to be there because there's a sort of purpose for the news organization or the marketing organization.
It's also true that photographers today are better photographers, photo makers, than they were historically. and they're better educated. They have better equipment that's more flexible, and for a lot of reasons, there are better pictures being made. So, in the 50s and 60s, even the unusual picture stands out because there aren't that many pictures. Now you got a lot of other pictures that are good. So the icon picture has to be that much better because all the others along here are as good as some of the icons over here. So the nature, the flow of pictures is different, and it's just different.
You're saying that the quality of the pictures is better, generally speaking. I'm assuming you mean technically, because it used to be that when you used the camera.
I mean content too.
You believe
technically
you believe
and content.
that?
I think so. You tell me if you agree.
Well,
with
look
that.
at the Alan Cordy photo. It's not a good photo.
That's true.
The composition is not great. The colors are not great, and you can tell that the photographer was either rushed or also taken by the emotion of that scene. But it still made it an important photo. It still got people to react to it and to share it and to create the whole movement behind it.
Well, also getting back to the volume, the more photos are used. No, isn't it fair to say? I mean, you may be getting used in
online,
general,
not in print.
Not
online,
in print,
yes,
but
online.
Let's say you get 6,000 photos in a day. Of that 6,000, more will be generally used than would have in the past.
Bear this in mind. They are not all seen the way they were seen previously. Before you do a paper or a magazine, you put out the magazine and there's the picture, there's the paper. It may lay there overnight or the next day or on the face of a Sunday paper the whole week. A magazine comes in and lays on the coffee table. Today, online, picture may be up 10 minutes, it may be up an hour and a half, maybe up longer, but it may not. And a lot of them up there. Life is short time on the internet. It's there. If you don't catch it on the first hop, it's gone and it's lost. Even the good ones.
Right. Or you have a series of photos and people will just look at the first 3 and the last 7 will not even get clicked through. I mean,
of course.
Do you guys do studies on that? Do you guys kind of metric?
I'm sure we have people doing this. I try not to. You don't want to start making decision on what is popular or what works. I try to stay with what I think is worth it.
One of the shots that you had included, I don't know if you specifically, but Lightbox in the shots of 2015 was actually a still from a video image of a police officer shooting a man running away. How did that decision come about to include what is not even really a photo? And is that something you think that we will be seeing more of, excerpted video stills taken as photos?
Well, in this particular case, it was the first video of a police officer shooting someone, and in this case, in the back. Like he'd been charged with murder. And that video was put under a microscope where every single newspapers and magazine were taking the frames to show the impact of that event. And it redefined the debate around race in the US. And we felt it was one of the most important image. Maybe not a photograph, but it's still one of the most important image of the year.
Right.
Video has always been watched by the users of still pictures for the still picture extract. That's pretty common. One of the early Pulitzers, in the 50s, was a racial picture of a football player breaking the jaw of another football player on purpose, and that was way back then. That was taken from motion picture footage. And in the early days before wire photo, AP got a lot of its pictures from newsreels because in those days, they shot 35 millimeter. You had like a half frame and pretty good quality.
And when you think about it, with the origin of video, it's just 24 frame a second, 24 still images.
Well, it's interesting. And as you spoke earlier about the shot of the truck dangling off the bridge, citizen journalism, frames being taken from footage, we're not really changing as much as we think we are, no?
What's changed is the volume. Really...
What changed is the fact that now we're all able to record this event. We all have a phone in our pocket that can shoot HD video and take 12 megapixel photos. You look at the plane landing on the Hudson River. The first photos of that came from the passengers themselves because they had the phone and they were able to take these photos. So you're always going to end up where if something is happening around the world, maybe the first photos coming out of that event will be taken by an amateur, normal person.
That has been true historically and remains true. The big difference now is that photographers can transmit immediately from almost anywhere with a computer and a satellite connection.
True.
So the professional still camera pictures are better. Many times video just gets something that nobody else gets, and that's where you start looking and hunting.
Exactly.
Last question that I have has to do with layoffs and budget cuts of all of the major news gathering and news organizations. There's a change going on where they're used to, even though everyone now has a camera and everyone takes pictures and any picture could become quote unquote iconic, the vehicles for getting them there are being etched away at. It is going to change things somehow.
Anybody who thinks that you can do a word story, still pictures, and video and audio, and one person can do that is sadly mistaken, and it will work to the disadvantage of good journalism.
Let's say a photo comes in from a citizen journalist, and then do you look at them differently, quality aside, in terms of what you're going to run?
You look at the news value. You look at, is it the best image to explain what's happening right there? And I'll take an example that happened last year with Time is when everything happened in Baltimore. We had a lot of professional photographers who were down in Baltimore covering the protest. And then we came across this photo on Instagram from a local, I'd say at that time he was amateur photographer, loved to shoot portrait. And he was born in West Baltimore. He knew that town, and he ended up in the middle of a protest shooting this one image of cops rushing towards the protesters. And what was very interesting about that image is that the sort of blurry nature of the photo, the grainy nature of the photo, made the cops look like they were from the 50s. And it put a different spin on the story where it linked everything that happened in America's past around race and put it in 2015. And it felt like nothing had changed. And that made it the most interesting photo at that time of these of this protest, this news event. Right. And so that's what comes into the mind of a photo editor. Is it the best photo to explain what's happening and to get people to understand?
The playing, once it comes to your desk, the playing field is level in terms of who it came from.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How could any competitive journalistic organization not use the best picture or what in their judgment is the best picture? That's happened at AP a lot.
And do you feel a conflict to some degree then to this issue of professional photographers finding perhaps less and less work or getting paid less? I mean, because you're not favoring that work over the other.
You look at, going back to that photo of Baltimore, the guy who shot it was a photographer.
Right. Or he may become a great photographer.
And now, now it also helped his career.
Right.
But I'd say that it shouldn't be the kind of element that comes into the decision-making process of showing what happened. And if the best photo comes from an amateur,
so be it.
So be it.
You remember the Oklahoma City bombing affair, and the key picture was a fireman carrying a child. Remember?
Yes.
That's made by an amateur. Now, to find that amateur, this guy was what we used to call an advanced amateur. He had a full camera. He was really a mortgage clerk in the bank. And he heard this explosion, and he went, well, might make some pictures there. He took his camera out, went out, and he made this picture. And somebody else made a similar picture. There were similar pictures on the Time and Newsweek. Both used different pictures of the same incident. And both were made by pictures who we would call amateurs, but who are really professional level like the same story you're telling about the Baltimore
like
thing.
the camera makers call that semi-professionals. Now.
Yeah.
Enthusiasts. That's what we call them here.
Actually, you can challenge this. I don't think that many citizen photos get used. I think that's a very small, because most of them are unusable. And these TV guys, send in your pictures and we'll put it up. You get a chair with snow on it, and the railing of the deck.
It's great for engagement, But
that's what they say. We get the people to participate. And I say, why do you want those people to participate?
They want the clicks.
when people hear that, then I'm going to hear about
But if you're doing the Baltimore story, say, for example, are you or someone on your staff going to be checking Instagram feeds every day with #Baltimore? Is that common practice now?
When something breaks, when something is very important, we'll use, we have a software that we use that allows us to look at Instagram according to location and hashtags, but it will not be our first point of call. Right away, we'll go on the wire. And it's only when we realize there's nothing on the wire or the photographers are not there, then we look at another source of photography. But if we just added Instagram to our mix, we'd be looking at hundreds of thousands of images every single day, and we'll
There'd
just...
be coffee shortages.
Yeah, exactly.
We've kind of gone away from the idea of iconic images to some degree, but because we have such an opportunity here, I want to ask kind of a serious question, more somber. I don't mean it glibly or naively, but how do you handle the carnage, the sadness that you see regularly? Just looking through your book yesterday at Pulitzer's over the years, I was brought to tears. And it has to have an effect. And
I think photographers feel that more than editors do. I could be wrong, but I think that's the case. And there has been a lot written in the last 10 years about PTSD as far as photographers are concerned. And I know Dick Drew was really upset about that picture he made of the falling man. And others have, there have been cases where photographers just said enough and they walk away from it.
It's a really good part of the book, the after effect on some of the photographers of those images that they took.
Yeah, and also it's become more dangerous for photographers now. Now photographers, up until almost all the way through Vietnam, photographers took risks, but they took risks they understood. Now they have become the subject of assassination, and a lot of it, and reporters too, not just, but photographers are identifiable because they're loaded with this equipment, and so there've been a lot of photographers murdered.
But in terms of the kind of the daily feed of images of heartbreak and bloodshed, is there enough distance? You're not the photographer.
On the editor's part, you're talking about.
Yeah, the editor's part.
I have not noted that, but maybe you have.
I've known colleagues that have to deal with that sort of PTSD. I'd say that the one thing that we have compared to the photographers is that we can just turn off the computer at the end of the day. The photographer often has to be in this place, live with their photos, live with the things.
And go out tomorrow and do the same thing.
Exactly.
You mentioned that Richard Drew is haunted or troubled by the photograph of falling man. Is it because he took the picture, or is it because of the effects of the picture?
Because of the effect of the picture itself. Like I said, you just look at that picture and you think of the decision the guy had to make up on that, whatever he was, on the 82nd floor. I feel that. I can't imagine how the photographer feels that made the picture of the guy after he made the decision. I mean, that's pretty heavy stuff.
No argument.
Yeah.
So, a couple of questions about iconic images, and we can wrap up from there. But we were talking earlier about the Kappa image in World War II, D-Day. And speaking as a European, are there images that you may recognize that Americans feel as iconic that you never even thought twice about, or vice versa?
I'll take the Robert Frank photo of the trolley in New Orleans. You show that photo to the majority of French people, it will not be an iconic image. And I can understand why, because that photo really spoke to the American public in terms of the situation, the racial separation that were deeply rooted in society at that time. For a French person, you look at that image and it's just a trolley.
Trolley. Right. Right. Let's say, for example, to put a definition on iconic, it has to do with culture. There's no way to separate. You know, you had in France the events, the murders and the attack recently. Are any of those photos, as far as you know, becoming ingrained that iconic more so than they might be here?
So I'd say one, it's too soon.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a couple of photos that I've seen that really moved me. There's one by Jérôme Delay, an AP photographer, of this body under a sheet and lying on that street. And it's alone, and it's like there's no one around it. There's no cops, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's alone there. And that photo really moved me.
That photo did move people, and I cannot explain it. It moved me, but I don't know why.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
There's something
That's
about
a very interesting picture. I don't know why I was moved by that picture, because it's the simplest kind of a picture you can imagine.
It's very simple.
And it would take I know Delay very well, and it would take somebody like him to even think of making that picture.
I know.
Interesting. It's so stark.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Completely.
Yeah.
But is it going to be an iconic image? I don't know.
Right. Time.
Time.
We're working toward a definition here. Culture, time.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You need a list of 15 things that contribute to making
exactly.
an icon.
Absolutely.
It's also true that I think icons are perceived differently in Europe than they are in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are there any images that stand out you would say is an iconic European image that we may not be familiar with, or either of you?
That's a good question. What picture transcends? As great as Joe Rosenthal's picture is, it means a lot more to Americans than it does to Europeans.
Of course.
Yeah.
Mussolini hanging by his feet after World War II.
Mm-hmm.
That's a terrible picture, but it said something about the picture that Caldi did of the Russian flag in Berlin. But that's such a I hate to say phony, but it's a created picture. But still, I think certainly in Russia, Stalin himself got involved in it to a ridiculous. That's a long story, but it's an interesting picture that fits into that category. Mm-hmm. It's a good question you pose. We're going to end this with a question we can't answer, and maybe that is the answer.
Well, how about we just end with one that we can throw out and answer? What is to you, or both of you, 2 or 3 images that undoubtedly are iconic photos? And then also, if you don't mind, maybe from this year. I mean, we've talked about this year enough, I guess, but
historically or forever. Yeah.
Forever.
You go first if you like.
I'll try to take in different genres. And it might not be my favorites, but like, for example, you look at The Afghan Girl by Steve McCurry on the National Geographic cover. This is an iconic image. It's not really a news photo, but it's a photo that everyone will recognize. And
everybody stops when they see it.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
She makes you pause.
Yeah. One that moved me also would be Chris Andros' photo of this Iraqi little girl who entire family just got killed by U.S. soldiers at a checkpoint, and she's covered in blood. That for me was an iconic image of the Iraq War. And another one is a defining moment by Henri Cartier-Bresson. That guy just jumping over that puddle of water at the right time.
So not necessarily news images.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I would vote for the Iwo picture because it is impossible to recreate the impact of that picture on American culture at that time. I've written a book on it, and I don't think I covered it all. It's just the impact was staggering. Mm-hmm. And that, you just can't take that away from it. And plus, it's put together as a picture should be.
Mm-hmm.
I always felt that the Hindenburg pictures, any one of them, because it marked the end of lighter than air flight, and also it was an attack. There were several pictures. There was that picture. There was Jesse Owens caught between the Nazi salutes at the Berlin Olympics, and Joe Louis knocking out Max Schmeling, which were all anti-Nazi pictures. And they are still iconic. I think most people would recognize those. In more recent times, of course, the Vietnam pictures, we all talked about those at great length. They're iconic. There have been many, many great pictures coming out of the Middle East. Not in the volume of Vietnam, but there are some pretty fascinating, telling photographs. I like the one, the girl in the green dress standing at the temple that was bombed and surrounded in the carnage.
Incredible.
It's a terrible picture, but boy, that tells the story of that terrible,
that to me
stupid war that they got involved in over there. That's right, boat, pretty much.
What about the moon? The print on the footprint on the moon, does that make it, or is that just too?
Well, that's an interesting question. I know you guys have talked about that, and the footprint, yes. I still like the picture of the guy standing on the moon, who was not the first man on the moon. He's the second man on the moon. But
it's true.
But it's the man on the moon, and the quality is there. The first picture is a fuzzy, poor television copy of a guy stepping off of a ladder. So you have to go with the others, and I think.
And then you also have the Earthrise over the moon.
Oh, the Earthrise. Yeah, exactly.
For me, that's a more iconic one.
Good point you make.
It's a one where you realize how small we are.
That's right.
And that was the first time we've all seen that.
Exactly.
Everybody saw that picture, that image for the first time together.
Yeah.
Although, you always see it horizontally. It was really made vertically.
Exactly.
Back to manipulated images.
Damn wire guys are always like that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Hal. Thank you, Olivier. Thank you, John, our producer, my co-pilot, and Jason Tables, our engineer. And a special thanks to Matt Hill, Gabe Biderman, and Todd Vorenkamp. Give us your opinions on Twitter at BHPhotoVideo with the hashtag BHPhotoPodcast. And please rate and leave a review on iTunes. My name is Alan Weitz. Thank you so much for joining us today.